Good evening. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in for this brief COVID-19 update for the city of Oswego. The purpose of tonight is to really reinforce all the rules we already know. It's important to do that because we are seeing our data move in a different direction and not a favorable direction, and that's concerning to me and certainly a major concern to officials all over Oswego County and Central New York. What really opened my eyes and demonstrated the need to do this was last Thursday when New York State came out with new guidance about bars and restaurants closing at 10 p.m. And limiting their service after 10 p.m. to curbside pickup. Also new regulations for gyms at 10 p.m. and reinforcing no parties or large gatherings. And I learned early on in my administration not to always focus on the comment thread on a Facebook page. I found early on that sometimes you do get good feedback and good ideas and questions and reasonable comments on a Facebook thread or a social media forum, but occasionally it goes sideways, and that's what happened Thursday when these guidelines came out, and I reposted the guidelines on my Mayor Billy Barlow Facebook page. And I just want to highlight some of the responses because a few of them were really frightening for me as mayor and both as a person, quite frankly. One comment was, quote, "You're out of your mind, we are not animals," end quote. Another quote was, "I will have as many people in my house as I see fit," end quote. And the comments really shook me, and I can't believe we're this far into the pandemic and this is the attitude of some people, but nevertheless it opened my eyes. Not only is the data moving in the wrong direction, but I think attitudes are changing, and I think it's probably COVID pandemic fatigue. I think people are over the pandemic in general, and that's leading to some reckless behavior, some negligent behavior, and some carelessness right here in our community, and that has to stop. And I'll explain why it has to stop. It has to stop because cases are up, not just nationwide and not just in other areas of New York, but right here in Oswego County and in the city of Oswego. You see here that we have a chart marked out, and this is Oswego County specifically. You can see back at the beginning of the pandemic in March and April, where the caseload here locally was relatively low. You see the spike in late spring and early summer. We held our own through the summer, and then you saw the cases go up drastically in September and October. Some of that had to do with obviously the SUNY community returning and school getting back in session. SUNY Oswego did a great job setting up a very aggressive and robust testing program. And they registered the positive cases. They quarantined those individuals. And you can see where they really got a hold of the situation once those positive cases registered. So you can see the caseload dip down again. And that brings us to the last 2 weeks or so. And you see the skyrocket in cases where the numbers are just going through the roof. I think that leads to a lot of things. 298 active cases here in Oswego County, 862 individuals right here in Oswego County in mandatory isolation or quarantine. And I think those numbers can be drawn back and retraced to a few things. Number one is Halloween weekend. We knew going in was going to be an active weekend, and it was. You're seeing these numbers are a result of Halloween weekend. A couple weekends ago, we had 70-degree weather for 4 or 5 days straight. I think that gave people some energy and had some cookouts and had some drinks together and had some small gatherings or mid-sized gatherings in their homes or other places. But I think the primary cause is people getting fatigued and people letting their guard down. Some of those numbers certainly are a result of testing. But testing is acknowledging and tracing the presence of COVID in our community. testing does not create the case to begin with. So this idea that testing is what's leading to more cases just doesn't make sense on any level. Testing is tracking the cases and identifying the cases, and is a tool we're using to stop the spread. But it's not actually creating cases. So there's a whole lot of reasons why that spike is happening. And I think we all know what the proper reaction and the proper behavior and protocols are. And we need to get back to doing them so we can flatten that spike and try to move our data in a favorable position. Like I said, cases nationwide, including the city of Oswego and Oswego County, are up. And the main point I want to make tonight is there's a lot of personal opinions and there's plenty of theories surrounding the virus. Some folks say the virus is a hoax, or it's not as bad as, quote, they say, or there's a 99% survival rate and therefore I don't have to be careful. We've all heard these assertions. But my plea this evening is to have everybody for a moment put aside their opinions and their theories. And if you want to put aside your political affiliation and your philosophical opinion as it relates to the virus, that'd be great too. Luckily, the presidential election is over, so that's one less issue we can hopefully take out of this conversation. And just do the right thing, like wearing a mask and like social distancing. We know the rules. Sanitize your hands regularly, avoid groups of people, limit the amount of personal interaction. And you should want to do that for your own health, to protect yourself. And if you don't want to do it to protect yourself, and if you don't want to do it to protect your own health, and if you think you're strong and young and the rules don't apply to you and the virus will never hurt you, you won't get it, then if not for yourself, you should want to do it for others. And you should want to do it for the immune compromised, and you should want to do it for senior citizens and the elderly. You should want to do it for first responders and those who work in the healthcare industry who are working tirelessly to help control the spread. You should want to do it for the vulnerable population in your own community. And again, if you don't care what happens to you, or you think that the rules don't apply and you don't have to worry about this, then do it for others, and let's take care of each other. Or if you don't want to do it for yourself, and if you don't want to do it for others, then you should at least do it to protect our local economy and avoid another shutdown and avoid another lockdown like we experienced earlier this year. You should do it to try to avoid more restrictions like were just put in place last week. And the reason that's so important is because there's actually criteria set up that can place areas as specific as the city of Oswego or even neighborhoods into zones where restrictions, economic restrictions, are put in place. And if we want to avoid these restrictions and the same type of restrictions that we saw that outraged so many people last week, the way to do that is to do the proper behavior and conduct the proper protocols that we all know by now to avoid being placed in these zones. Which, to be frank, if our data continues going in the direction it's going, we will be placed in. Last month, New York State developed a micro-cluster strategy to combat localized or regional outbreaks. A regional or local area, depending on the case data, is subject to localized restrictions or potential shutdowns if necessary, as I said. And I want to draw you to the yellow zone because that's the first step. A yellow zone area either is put in place as a broader buffer area to ensure a COVID outbreak isn't spreading to a broader community, or is implemented independently based on a set of metrics that I'll show you in a moment. The yellow zone, the purpose is to restrict some activity to help prevent the further spread to an orange or red warning zone, and to provide a larger defined geographic area where metrics can be monitored daily to ensure a COVID is not spreading beyond other zones. When the state rolled out that criteria, they divided the state into different areas. Oswego is in what they're calling Tier 3. And each tier has its own set of metrics that guides and depending on if you meet those metrics or not, you get placed in a certain zone. There's 3 zones: a yellow zone, orange zone, red zone. Yellow is the bottom, orange is the middle, red is the most severe. You can see the criteria for Oswego in Tier 3 is the zones will be levied upon you if you meet these criteria consistently. The first piece is a geographic area that has a 7-day rolling average positivity above 3.5% for 10 days, and a geographic area has 15 or more new daily cases per 100,000 residents on a 7-day average. Here's Oswego County. This is according to covidactnow.org. You can see the daily cases. Keep in mind the last number was 15. We're at 25.6. Go back to the last slide. The criteria above is 3.5% for 10 days. We're at 3.8. So when I say if we keep going in the direction we're going, more restrictions will be on the way. You can see the description provided here states that Oswego County is actively experiencing or is at extreme risk. COVID cases are exponentially growing. And the only way to change that data, as I said earlier, is by our own behavior. Here's what, when you're placed in the yellow, orange, and red zones, here's what that means. You can see 50% capacity at worship, 25 people maximum. This is really consistent with the restrictions placed on last week, but the point is once you become a yellow, you're well on your way to the orange, and look what that means. More capacity reduction, more restrictions on indoor and outdoor activity, closings of high-risk, non-essential businesses, and a limitation on dining. And you can see the bullet points on what it takes to come out of those zones and what some of the other activities required, what the community will be subject to: increased community testing efforts, increased enforcement and compliance. Once you get placed in these zones, that's a big one. You'll see some outreach, increased contact tracing is required, and increased public education, which is what I'm trying to do here tonight, proactively, to avoid this scenario altogether. And again, the main point tonight is to remind you to get back to basics, to avoid shutdowns and to look out for each other. Getting back to basics means no non-essential gatherings. The holidays are coming up. I understand it's a time to be social and to be in large groups and have parties and to have large family gatherings. You really shouldn't do it, not because the governor says you can, certainly not because I say you can, but because it's the right thing to do for everybody involved. You should avoid groups of people. What we mean by groups of people are people that aren't normally in your household. So every time you go to dinner with people you don't live with, you are exposing yourself. Your chance of contracting the virus grows. Limit trips to large retail shops. This is one that really irritates me because earlier this year, when everything else was shut down, you still saw thousands and thousands of people going to Walmart on a daily basis. Limit your trips to large retail shops. There's no reason to go to Walmart every day. There's no reason to go to Walmart every other day. And there's certainly no reason to go to Walmart and bring the entire family into Walmart with you. It doesn't make sense on any level. If you need to go shopping, consolidate your shopping trips. Make a list and get everything you need in one shop so you don't have to go back for quite a while. A nice alternative to walking into Walmart or other large retail shops is to shop local at smaller businesses here in Oswego. We found that the smaller businesses, locally owned businesses, are actually doing a better job enforcing the mask mandate. They're doing a better job offering hand sanitizer at checkouts and throughout the store. Social distancing is easier at these local shops because there aren't as many people in a small area. So support local businesses. That's one way to protect yourself and help support our economy as we navigate this difficult situation. Third point is understand the risk and act accordingly, and understand that your level of activity equals your possibility of exposure. The amount of activity you do increases your exposure. If you want limited Possibility of exposure, stay home and only go out when you absolutely have to. If you want to increase the possibility you're exposed, then feel free to keep walking into Walmart and be out and about and socialize in large crowds, but that really isn't the smart thing to do. An interesting development in Onondaga County is they actually stopped listing the locations of exposure. I actually personally like listing the locations of exposure, but their point was, if you are out and you are in these places, then you can reasonably assume that you've been exposed, and therefore understand that while you're out at these places, restaurants and stores, your possibility of exposure is high. Back to basics, wear your mask and sanitize your hands. It's a really small ask, and I'm just amazed that we still have to keep driving this home. Again, businesses have done a great job enforcing the mask wearing in their establishments, and we need to keep it up, sanitize your hands regularly. And lastly, if you're experiencing symptoms, get tested. We have our great partners here with Oswego Health and WellNow here in Oswego that are testing locations. It's a quick test, it's easy, relatively painless. I've had a test back when this all started, late spring, early summer, and it is really easy to do. If you're experiencing symptoms, I realize now it's allergy season, it's flu season, so you may downplay some of the symptoms that you think you may have. Oh, it's just allergies, it's not COVID. If you're feeling these symptoms, better safe than sorry. Get tested so that if you are in fact positive, we can remove you from society, if you will, and keep it from spreading to your relatives and your friends. So, basic guidelines, it's common sense. We should know this by now. The fact is, you do know this by now. Everybody knows the rules, everybody knows the proactive and protective measures, everybody knows the appropriate protocols. It's just a matter of if you want to follow them or not. And you need to follow them. And like I said earlier, if not for yourself, then do it for others. And if not for yourself and you don't care about others, then do it to avoid another lockdown and another shutdown that we all dread. Lockdown and shutdowns become the evil word, and rightfully so. We all want to avoid that. It's not good for anybody. So let's avoid that, and we do that by improving our behavior and our activity so that our data turns around and we're in a better position than we are right now. It's about doing the right thing for the right reasons. The right thing for the right reasons is to wear the mask, sanitize your hands, socially distance. Don't host parties. Stay out of groups of people, and do your small part to turn it around. Do it for the good of this community. Thank you for tuning in. I'm always available for questions, ideas, comments, concerns. Feel free to contact my office. Thanks for tuning in, and please stay safe.